Hey guys, Everdudgeon 138 here. I haven't done a video like this in quite a while. Reason being is the tripod for my camera actually broke, so I just got a new one, so I'm all set up again. I think the last video I did like this was a video of the kind of the prediction of what Sequential's next synth might be. It turned out to be the Prophet 5 and 10 reissues. I didn't see that coming. I don't think anybody did. But in that video, I I kind of predicted that it might be a lower kind of compact polysynth, analog polysynth, and sort of a successor to the Mofo X4. Turned out it was the Sequential Take 5, so it was pretty close. So the Take 5 and the Prophet X, I kind of got spot on in terms of the predictions. So Take 5 sounds great. I don't know if I get one, but it does sound very good, and I think it's a great complement synth. Like if you have, like if you have like a Pro 3 and you want like just a small poly synth on the side, that's great for that. If you have just like a kind of a small setup, or if your main instrument is like a guitar or some other instrument, and you just kind of want like a smaller poly synth on the side, it's perfect for that. I sort of kind of equate it to it's sort of like Sequential's Juno to their Jupiter, if you kind of get my drift. It's sort of like it's not exactly a Prophet level, but it's still very good, and it still has its own character. In regards to the Prophet 5 and the 10 reissues, I don't really have any interest in that. I think I would be missing too many of the features that are on the Prophet 6 to justify owning really a nostalgia piece. It's great, it sounds fantastic, but, and don't get me wrong, like my dad had a Prophet 5. Of course I love John Carpenter, and he used a Prophet 5, all that stuff, but I think I'd be missing the onboard distortion, I'd be missing the onboard effects, the arpeggiator, the sequencer, the high pass filter, the sub oscillator, and just a wider range of the polymod, variable wave shapes. I think I'd be missing too many of the features of those, of like kind of the modern Prophet 6 synths, than to kind of justify that. So in fact, I've actually learned to kind of embrace some of the characteristics of the Prophet 6, and yeah, it doesn't sound exactly like a Prophet 5 all the time. You can certainly program it to, but I think you're kind of limiting yourself if you do that. Especially when you drive the filter really hard, or put some distortion on there, get some or use the high pass filter and things of that nature, or the sub oscillator. It can really have its own voice. And I think, and I'm guilty of this, I think I was just so wrapped up in trying to get it to sound like a Prophet 5 that I really kind of missed the point of, oh, it's actually a Prophet 6. It's the next step. It's the next level. And I'd much rather see that. I'm not really too big on reissues. And it's interesting because I was really kind of like, I don't know if I really want to get the Prophet 5. And somebody on the Sequential forum mentioned, they're like, well, you want to get the two ARP Odyssey desktop modules. You want to get an Oberheim 2 Voice Pro. Aren't those technically reissues of older models? And I really was paused to wonder. I was like, yeah, they are. And I thought, and I could, I mean, you can do whatever you want, obviously. But part of me was kind of like, getting the two ARP Odyssey desktop modules, which are now out of production at the moment. Are they like? Would I be using them frequently enough? Or can I get by with the gear that I have to emulate that John Carpenter sequencing and everything like that? Do I have to have the ARP Odyssey desktop modules? Well, if I get the ARP Odyssey desktop modules, now I have to get a separate sequencer. Now I have to run them through external effects because they don't have onboard effects and everything like that. Do I want to go through all that and maybe use them on a couple tracks and then just kind of have them sit there? Or do I want an instrument that I'm actually going to interact with more frequently? And I think that would be the Pro 3 for me. Because not only can it get all that classic, just especially with the 3 filters, those classic kind of analog bass sounds, but it also has a wavetable oscillator. So it can get all that fast Sylvester Levay, Tangerine Dream kind of digital 80s sequencing and everything like that. Because as much as I love John Carpenter and Alan Howarth, their collaborations, and my intention was I was going to build up my setup to kind of do a modernized version of their setup on Big Trouble in Little China. I realized that they're not my only influence, right? Like I love Claudio Simonetti, I love Paul Zaza, trying to think who else, but not even just pure synth guys. Like obviously I love classical and orchestral compositions from Ronald Stein and Les Baxter and stuff like that. But so I thought, well, is it really gonna hurt to have something that really isn't, because it's such a rabbit hole effect, right? It's like, okay, I get the Prophet 5 and now I have to get the Prophet 10 because they had a Prophet 5 and 10, although theirs was the dual manual keyboard version. Okay, now I got the ARP Odyssey desktops. Okay, now, well, the Prophet X's might be too modern, so I'm going to try and find an emulator 2 online. And okay, now I have to get, it's going to be spending so much time and money kind of chasing that dragon that the creative output is going to suffer. At least I think it will. So the Pro 3 for sure is definitely on my list. And that kind of segues into another thing in regards to Sequential. Now, with Sequential, they were purchased by Focusrite, and I was kind of iffy on it myself. I was like, oh, are they going to ship the whole production to, the Far East to develop it there? Are they going to? We don't know. But Dave has come out and said that no, that won't be the case. We'll just kind of operate as normal. But I wonder how long that will last. Not to be so pessimistic, but at the same time, I think if Sequential were to come out with a wavetable based synth or an FM based synth or even a hybrid, so say for example they want to do a synthesizer with wavetable oscillators but running through an analog filter, Focusrite might say, oh, that might eat into our Novation Summit market, and there might be a little bit of conflict there. If Sequential says, well, we want to do a drum machine now, and Novation says they want to do a drum machine, who gets the preference? So I think what might happen is I think Focusrite might delegate wavetable, FM, and sampling to Novation, and they might delegate just analog gear to Sequential. Because since the purchase, we've seen the Take 5 and the Prophet 5 and 10 reissues. Now, it's a little bit too early to kind of read the leaves and kind of tell what's going to happen next, but I think the next instrument is probably going to be the OBX reissue, which also I don't really have any interest in. But what happens after that is going to be very telling. If they come out with another analog synth, then after the OBX reissue, then we kind of know, okay, like this is where it's gonna. This is exactly where what the feature is gonna hold. It and like Sequential is just gonna be analog only. Novation's gonna handle all the other forms of synthesis under the Focusrite banner. But that also kind of puts Sequential in a weird kind of corner, because when I think of Sequential, I think of like innovation. I think of, okay, they're, obviously the Prophet X and the Prophet 12 and just kind of experimenting with other forms of synthesis, of course, the Tempest and everything like that. But if they're just going to be delegated to analog only, if they are, then where do they go after 2 or 3 more analog synths? Do they do a Pro 1 reissue? I don't know why they would, but would that all be what's left? Do they do, I don't know, like, I guess the next step would be kind of what comes after the Prophet 6. Do you have kind of a analog monster polysynth where it's kind of like the Rev 2 architecture and the modulation matrix and everything like that, but it has Prophet 6 engines in it and it's bitimbral and everything like that? That would be cool. But then what else after that? And that's where it gets kind of conflicting, because I would love to see them do a polysynth based on the Pro 3 architecture of 2 VCOs. And although the Pro 3 has 1 wavetable oscillator, I would love to see 2 on there. And I'd like to see kind of some of the things from the Prophet 12 kind of expanded on. There was like an arpeggiator scratch pad, which I don't know why they haven't put in their other gear. Like, it would be fantastic on the Prophet X, but they just never implemented it, which I think is a shame, because I think it's fantastic. And of course, they have 4 different oscillators on there, and so far we've kind of only been at 2 oscillators after that, really, if you think about it. I guess the Prophet X has kind of 2 oscillators and 2 samples, I guess, so I guess it is kind of 4, but other than that, it's mostly just we've gone from 4 to 2. There's no dedicated FM and no dedicated AM knobs like there was on the Prophet 12. I'd like to see that re-implemented, but again, what's Focusrite going to say if Novation wants to come out with a wavetable bass synth and Sequential wants to come out with a wavetable bass synth? I guess they could collaborate, and it would be Sequential Innovation, and it would just be called whatever, and would have the VCOs from the Take 5 or the Prophet 5, and it would have the FPGA oscillators from the, I think that's what they're called, FPGA. Whatever, those high end digital oscillators from the Summit in one synth. I guess you could do that, and it would be a collaboration. But how many times is that going to happen? And so that is a little bit worrisome to me. But again, it is still too early to tell. We'll just have to kind of wait and see at this point. But in regards to the Prophet X, I actually just found out that they're discontinuing the Prophet XL, which is a shame, because I always said I want to get a Prophet XL eventually and actually have the Prophet X and the XL together. I think it'd be fantastic. I don't know if that'll happen at this point, but that's a shame. And I think that kind of it's because of a lot of reasons. It probably wasn't a good seller. I thought it was a bit weird to kind of have a larger form factor of the Prophet X, as cool as it was, but I think they should have just went with a desktop module. And apparently they logistically couldn't figure out a desktop module or something. I'm not sure the exact reasoning, but I think the Prophet X in general is probably going to be the next to go on the Sequential chopping block, to be honest with you. That's probably a Focusrite decision, and it probably left a bad taste in Sequential's mouth, and because it was so different than their other synths, and plus there was a collaboration with 8DO, and 8DO did drop the ball on a lot of support for the Prophet X, and there was a lot of kind of radio silence on both parties as to in regards to like bug issues and things of that nature, where the customers were being bounced back and forth between the companies. And I also think the demos of the Prophet X out of the gate were terrible by Jerry Basserman, and he admittedly said that he wasn't familiar with it when he first debuted it, which I thought was, I don't know why you wouldn't be familiar with a synth that you're demoing, but he just constantly kept layering a piano with a a sawtooth wave, and it's weird. Like it was just a really haphazard demo, and I think it really put a lot of people off. Even the demo at, I think, Craft Music, it's just the audio only demo, or the no talking demo or whatever it is. It's all synth sounds. There's like almost no sampling in it, and I'm like, what? Like it's just really bizarre. So yeah, I think that's going to be the next thing, unfortunately, because it's my favorite synth. It really is, and a lot of sentimental reasons behind that. But I mean, what can you do? But my next video will be a review video. It won't be an extensive review video, but it'll be about my new Isla Instruments S2400 drum sampler. Like I said, it'll just be more. It won't be an extensive review because there's definitely much more qualified people on YouTube, kind of going in depth and everything on the machine. But it'll more or less be kind of some of the features I'd like to see implemented on the machine, kind of comparing it to some of the features of the Tempest and everything. Like I said, these two are going to stay in my setup for sure. I'm not getting rid of either one of them. They're fantastic. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. I hope everybody's doing well. Happy Halloween, by the way. And yeah, you guys have yourself a wonderful day, and I will see you next time, okay? Have a great day. Bye.